The biggest question on everyone's mind is the Bitcoin bottom in? And are we still going down further? And we may have an answer to both of those questions within the next 24 hours. Let's talk about it. Road Dog Crypto. Welcome back to Road Dog Crypto. My name is Lane, and I am going to try to help you make sense of what's going on with Bitcoin in the market today. Now, if you caught my last video, we've been tracking this Adam and Eve pattern that we've been looking at, tracking it beautifully on the 8-hour chart. It seems the best one where I can get the most accurate information. And currently, if we zoom in, we can see that we are just now breaking this downward trend, which is very important. Now, pulling the Fibonacci, you can see that we broke through the 618 around the $20,200 level. And on the KuCoin chart, Bitcoin against Tether, we reached a bottom of around $18,902, which was a wick down from our 786 Fibonacci level of around 19,500 in that area. Now, if you notice, I got this green line that's touching this candle top right here, this candle top at the peak of our Adam and Eve. Now, it does cut through this candle, but on other time frames, it does not. That part is not as important as connecting these 2 points right here. And if we follow it through all the way, we can see that is where we touched down for our bottom. So it is respecting this trend line, and it is a strong trend line. Now, this red trend line that I have drawn here from the bottom wicks is kind of freaking everybody out. And the ones freaking out are the ones looking at this more from the triangle perspective. Now, that does not invalidate this idea at all, but how this could perform is that this would be a bear trap, which would be a very bullish sign taking us back up into these levels. And if you recall from my last video, we were playing around with the fractal idea from 2018, which kind of had us touching this bottom trend line and coming back up and just kind of really slowly going sideways. Now, that is a possibility given our current circumstances globally that I could see happening. I could also see things going worse. So we need to dig a little bit deeper and see if this could possibly be the bottom or not. And I've got something to show you that may prove that it is. And we should know for sure within the next couple of days. But before we get into that, let's take a look at what is going on currently now at the 8-hour. If you remember up here at this top, we got the red dot on market cipher on the 8-hour. That signaled the big, painful downtrend that we've seen, unless you were shorting, which, hey, you did good. Shorted all the way down to the 18,900 region. Now we had the green dot on market cipher indicating that we're going to take a leg up. We've broken out of this pattern. Indicators are showing, especially on the 8-hour, that we should get a movement up. Now, how far will that go up? Now, our MACD is starting to take a little bit of a turn. RSI is starting to take a turn up. If we look a little closer at the Ichimoku, we can see that we've got a little patch of red here and then a patch of green. And what I can tell you about Ichimoku is that it does not run under the green. It breaks down through the green. This is also telling me that we can expect an uptrend. Now, let's figure out how far we can expect it to go up. Now, to find these points, I'm going to take my Fibonacci retracement tool. I'm going to pull it from this top down to this bottom wick where we're at. And the levels that we need to look at are the 382, which would be 2,300 according to this chart. Now, you might notice some different numbers, so it's important for you to do the same things I'm doing here on your own charts. If you're trading on a different exchange like Binance or Coinbase or FTX, it's all going to be a little different. So you need to take your own measurements to get your exact points. But the first point I'm looking at is this 382, 2,300. The next point is the 0.5, which would be 2,722. And the highest that I can look for it to go to at the moment is 21,144. Here's what I'm expecting to happen, which by all means does not mean that it's going to play out in this manner. At some point, we'll break above this trend line that was broken, and that will propel us up past this red cloud. Now, anywhere through here, we can take a dive under, whether it's here or we bounce off this top, which kind of looks most likely, because when we break into the cloud, it is usually in the thick green areas. And from there, we can see it come back down. Now, how far can it come back down? And will this mark the bottom? This is where we got to dig a little deeper, and we're going to take a look at the pi cycle chart and how that relates right now, because the lines are about to cross. Now, does that mean that we take another dive down, or do we continue up and then take our dive down? And how far will that dive go? So since we still have our Fibonacci pulled up, let's go ahead and mark out those areas. So the area that I would be looking to is this 0.27 area that I have marked, which will bring us in about 17,968. I have this negative 0.3 382 area, which would bring us in about 17,564 in that area. The lowest target that the fib tells us that we could reach on this would be the 16,720 area. So keep those areas in mind in case things do take a turn to the downside. And we have to keep this in mind because even though we have an Adam and Eve bottom, which if you look back through Bitcoin, all of our bottoms have been Adam and Eves, and I'll show you that in just a second, but it is also possibly forming a bear flag. And that's got a lot of people spooked too. Now, will the market makers and all the smart money use that to their advantage to scare us and take us down to around 11,488? Anything could happen, especially when you start looking at the global economy. I can only tell you what's going on in the charts. The global economic situation is playing a big part in this since we are tied to Wall Street. Also, there could be some collateral damage from what's been going on with Three Arrows Capital and all that, and FTX and Alameda Research have their fingers in that. That perks up some red flags for me. And on top of that, we're also expecting the Mt. Gox possible sell-off, where a crap load of Bitcoin is going to be released back to the public. So you got to keep these things in mind. It could definitely go further. And I will give you one example where we did have an Adam and Eve bottom that did just that. However, the only thing that Adam and Eve bottom didn't have was the Pi cycle bottom indicating that we hit a bottom, which we have that indicator saying that now. All right, take a look with me now at the BLX chart. This is the Brave New Coin Liquid Index, which is the longest running record for Bitcoin. Now, it does run behind, and it looks like it's a day behind. And so why I'm saying that we may identify the bottom is that the Pi cycle chart, the Pi bottom chart, those indicators are ready to cross. The date that I have there is actually today's date. Within the next couple of days, we should have this indicator cross, marking our bottom. And let me show you just how accurate this is. But in the meantime, does that mean that we take a downturn to make lower prices, or have we hit that bottom already? I will feel more comfortable about the prices that we're at and avoiding going lower once I see the signal cross. Well, guys, let's take a little fun journey right now. Let's go back to when Bitcoin was running about $50. Let's go back to around 2013, when we can see our first real big run up in Bitcoin and then our bottom. And if you notice on here, we've got an Adam and Eve, which slowly played down back to the original points there. And what did it do? It made another Adam and Eve. Now, the Pi cycle chart doesn't show up on this yet. That comes a little further. But as we travel through time, checking out all these envious Bitcoin prices, and I remember giving up and selling all my Bitcoin around these prices because I was a fool. But 2014, what happened? Adam and Eve. How did that one play out? That one went to the upside. That's what we're hoping for with an Adam and Eve. That's not what we got. We got the price down. It did eventually make another bottom, but it was a higher low than what we saw on the official bottom. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. When we get to 2015, this is where our Pi cycle bottom came into play. This was the first indicator of that. To the very day that it crossed, we hit the bottom. We made our lowest low on this day of the crossing. And that's why I say with the crossing that's due today or tomorrow, did we already hit it when it dropped down to the 18,700 area? Possible. Now, what happened with this one? This one went up, came back down, didn't quite do what we're looking for ours to do. It didn't make it down that far with that trend line, but then it took off. Bitcoin shot way up to almost 20,000 there, came back down, and then we come to the 2018 bottom that we were doing our fractal on, which I think most likely might be how this plays out. But if you notice on this, Pi cycle bottom indicated that one right on the nose. Traveling up further, we had the COVID crash here. And this kind of brings us to where we are today. And so the big question is, was that big drop that we had today, is that our local bottom for a while? Was the 17,600 our bottom for this cycle? Things are starting to look as though it were. I am leaning more and more toward that theory every day. In fact, I'm also now starting to get some long-term holds in some altcoins right now, to dollar cost average in on those over the upcoming months. Follow me over to the DXY, the Dixie chart for the US dollar, and we see that it hit our measured move of 108 and got rejected. This is a good thing. It still has a lot of strength, but it looks for the short term that we got a little leg down, and that's where we're going to get that bump up with Bitcoin. And if this bottom plays out similar to the 2018 fractal that we put up, this helps me understand why. because we would be fighting Bitcoin against the dollar, sometimes trading with it, sometimes trading against it. But the dollar is going to keep going up. It is very, very strong. Looking at the weekly, we've still got a ways to go. I've got some measure moves up to 130 and to 165. It's very possible, just depending on what goes on globally. The dollar is getting stronger against all the other currencies, and we've seen that with the euro, one-to-one parity right now. So always keep the DXY in the back of your mind. Chart it as well to see what's going on with Bitcoin. Now, total 2 is looking pretty good right now for altcoins, and we could see a bump up in the alts, but it's still kind of iffy. I do kind of see this taking a little leg up and then getting rejected and coming back further, as Bitcoin just probably kind of takes the show. We'll just have to see how this plays out. Alts are still kind of iffy, so trade them very carefully. But bearing in mind, if you're investing and trying to build a position, this is not a bad time to start initially getting those positions over the next 18 months. Just take it slow, because we can't expect altcoins to take huge dumps over these next few months too. Bitcoin dominance is at a point of resistance right now, so it's hard to say what's going to happen. If it gets rejected out of this trend line as well and starts coming back down to our measure moving around 40, that is great for altcoins. That's really what you want to look for if you are trying to get in altcoins right now. We want to see Bitcoin dominance go down. If we see Bitcoin dominance go up, it's time to get out of altcoins. And so the last chart that we're looking at is the NDX, the Nasdaq 100, which poses an interesting question for us since Bitcoin was following this so closely. We can see that it broke out of this trend line but came back in. That's very bearish. Even our EMAs are suggesting that we are coming down on this. It may eventually break out of this because this is a bullish pattern, but at the moment it looks like it may be coming down. And what we don't want to see is for it to stay back in this pattern, because if it breaks to the downside of this pattern, it's going to tank. If we do get a breakout, we can expect to move up a little bit. That kind of depends on how this Ichimoku kind of plays out here. If it starts getting a little thin and coming down like this, this is what we're looking for. If we're getting thick, then it'll try to make a move up through it. But what does that mean for Bitcoin since we follow this? Are we decoupling from the Nasdaq? Because that may be a very interesting thing. That could be a unique opportunity to flush out all the weak-handed hedge funds who kind of sell when they get scared, but then FOMO back in, driving the prices up higher. Very interesting. Now, coming back to the 4-hour for one last look at Bitcoin, just to kind of get a feel for what is going on the more short term. We're struggling, okay? I do see us breaking back up to this trend line and slowly working our way back up, hopefully through this red cloud up to around 21,000. And then that's where I expect things to kind of maybe fall back down for a little bit, hopefully just to this trend line, maybe back down to this trend line, 19,621. That's kind of the more realistic range that I'm looking for. But with what we've seen, just keep in mind, things could go either way. So just play things carefully. But as for me, what I'm doing, I am still stacking my sats. I'm stacking Bitcoin. I have been buying Bitcoin, and I've been buying a few choice altcoins while they're on the low, even though they may go half price over the next few months. I'm building a position for long-term holds on there. Other than the long-term positions that I'm kind of building up right now for the next bull run, I've been doing some swing trading and also some scalping. The scalping is just kind of to brush up on my skills, because it's a different mindset that you have to be in to do that than swing trading or investing. And it's kind of tricky, but that's something you'd like to hear a little bit more about. Leave some comments below and we can talk about that, or perhaps even do it on the live stream. It's pretty fun on the 5-second chart. Now guys, things rarely play out exactly like I draw them, but they do come in the general areas. So this is what I'm expecting. Be careful, be safe out there. Hopefully we have got this bottom in. We should get a verification on that over the next 24 to 48 hours. That's all I got, guys. Be blessed, be safe, trade carefully, and remember, you've got this. Road Dog Crypto.